So we heard earlier tonight that Wayne Kramer passed away. Wayne Kramer of the MC5. So that means there's only one guy left in the band. And I was kind of thinking about the MC5, and it's funny growing up in the Detroit area, and I can remember, they're famous for having the song, Kick Out the Jams, MFers, and there was a censored version of that song, and so even in Detroit, when they would play that song on the radio, they would play the censored version of it. And I can remember the kids on my block, the older kids, they got together one day and they were talking about how a radio station in town was going to play the uncensored version of Kick Out the Jams. And I remember everyone kind of gathering around and talking about it. There used to be a station in Detroit called, hold on a minute. A little loud. And there was a station in Detroit called WABX. And WABX, they were a little unorthodox. This is back in the days when you could have that still in a station, they could be a little bit different, a little bit unorthodox. And sure enough, later in the afternoon, as we all kind of gathered around my older friends, boombox, he had like one of these little portable boomboxes. All the kids in the neighborhood are gathered around it, and sure enough, the roaring introduction of this song, Kick Out the Jams, motherfuckers. And it was like a celebration of something, a celebration of, I don't even know if we understood really what it was a celebration of: freedom, of being young, of defiance, and of doing the things that you're not supposed to do. And it was like that, I remember when I first ordered, I got this record, I was probably 13 years old or so, and there used to be a little store in the area called Harmony House, and I went in and I told them I wanted the MC5. I wanted an MC5. I wanted the MC5 record, and they were like, "Well, there's multiple copies of it." And I didn't really know which one to get, and so the guy told me. Actually, it was a woman, and she told me, "Well, we got to special order it from England at the time," and so here I was, this kid in Detroit, special ordering the MC5 album from the UK. It took about a month to get into Harmony House, and I went back and I bought it, and it was I got to admit, it was different than what I thought it was going to be. I was used to this live album. Occasionally, a friend of mine had it. Every once in a while, they played it on the radio. They didn't play this a lot on the radio, even in Detroit. Not really. I mean, it was legendary, but you didn't hear a lot about it. But eventually, I really started to dissect this record. I can't tell you how many times. I'm sure hundreds of times I probably listened to this record. And the songs that really hit me were just a couple of them. And one of them in particular was a song called American Ruse. And I'd never really heard a song being critical of the country before. Kind of anti-police, anti-military. Remember, the Vietnam War was going on. And it was eye-opening to hear somebody sing so openly and be critical of the country. Of course, I had lots of people who were older than us were real. They didn't like that idea. It's funny how people they like the word freedom, but then when you utilize when you utilize the freedom, they don't like that so much. Americans are real good at that. We like to talk about freedom of speech, and we like to talk about, you know, a rule-based order in the world, but not for us. We're willing to defy those things, and that's what the MC5 was singing about, those kind of contradictions. And I guess I'd never heard that before. And with Wayne Kramer going, and we had seen Wayne Kramer a couple years ago. We saw him in Detroit at the L Club, and then we saw him again at St. Andrew's Hall, and both great shows. And I remember I have an older friend who I taped some of it on my phone, and I sent it to him while the show was going on. And he said, sent me back a note, and it said, "Yeah, well, I was there at the Grande Ballroom when they recorded recorded that album to begin with." So he goes, "I don't need to see the tribute," but the tribute was really cool. And you know, Wayne was the only member of the band there, and he was so full of life, and you could tell he was just overjoyed that there were people, all these young people. I mean, the crowd was full of, you know, people probably anywhere from in their 60s and 70s all the way to in their early 20s, and it was pretty cool. So Wayne's gone, and I just thought I'd say a few words about it. These albums have always been a big part of my musical history, and grew up with them. Like, these were the biggest albums in the world. You know, people talked about Led Zeppelin and all these huge bands, and you know, for some of us, it was the Stooges and the MC5 seemed like, you know, they were the biggest bands in the world. And so, you know, I guess it shouldn't matter all that much. I shook the man's hand once, as close as I ever got to speaking to him. But there's a rich history there. And sometimes it's a history that I think is getting overlooked sometimes, because, you know, the MC5 was responsible for forming a group called the White Panther Party, which was a group of white sympathizers to the Black Panthers. And you know, they talked a lot about revolution and making things better for regular people. And that spirit, sometimes I think that spirit's gotten a little lost, that tradition in American subculture, American underground. And you just don't see it. It seemed to have vanished today. And then I even hear people who are of that age who just have these, you know, reactionary views on so many things. It's shocking sometimes, but it is what it is, you know. Anyway, I was out tonight and came home a little bit early just because just wanted to get in a little bit early tonight and spin a few records before I go to sleep, and I think I'll make it a MC5 kind of a night. If you're listening and you really wanna, this has always been this is a kind of it's a kind of best of. It's called Babes in Arms. It's really a group of demos that the band put together and released. Originally it came out on a cassette tape, and I used to have the cassette, and that was the only way to get it. And then it came out on CD eventually, and they did eventually release a LP version of it. And it's a bunch of demos, but the MC5, the production on most of the MC5 records was never so good on the two studio albums. And I think that these demos actually are better at kind of demonstrating the power of the band, rather than the studio albums are. The live album was so good because it caught them in their, you know, natural element. Anyway, MC5, a band who was a lot more than just a loud proto-punk, proto-metal band. And keep in mind, on the live album, they did a cover of a Sun Ra track. So they were a proto-metal, proto-punk band that was flirting with a lot of things in the underground, musically adventurous in ways that you just don't. Yeah, I mean, they're out there. There are bands that are doing it, but there was a glimmer of hope back in the 69, 70 when they signed the MC5 and their little brother band, the Stooges, to a record contract, and it seemed like that revolution that they talked about was just right around the corner. And today we see that we're a long way from it today. That's the way it is sometimes. So anyway, just a few words on Wayne and the band, and hope everyone has a good night. And if you think of it tomorrow or the next day, play your favorite MC5 track and think of Brother Wayne and what they were able to accomplish in those few years. Thanks. Have a good night.